the backwardness that exists there, first of all, is a construct of the United States. It's the legacy of US intervention in the country that even brought to prominence these reactionary forces, these right-wing forces. I mean, they completely were born from the US intervention in the 80s. So first off, the situation for women in Afghanistan is because of the United States in the first place. So the idea that it could be solved by continued US intervention is just also kind of absurd. Everyone talks about the Taliban's treatment of women, but the Afghan puppet government was also really bad towards women. And that was never really scandalous in the media that the Afghan puppet government had almost like the same policies towards women as the Taliban. Understand that the majority of civilian casualties for people who care about women in Afghanistan are from U.S. airstrikes and U.S. forces and U.S. proxy forces. So it's kind of disingenuous to say, if we need to, the U.S. military can play some sort of role in protecting women in Afghanistan when how many women have been killed by U.S. airstrikes over the last 20 years? A lot. And the U.S. government doesn't care about that. I mean, they're happy to work with Saudi Arabia. They're happy to work with other countries that have horrible repressive policies towards women, and they will be happy to work with the Taliban as long as the Taliban say, "Hey, we're ready to work with you." The U.S. government, Washington, will just forget about all the criticisms they have of the Taliban's treatment of women. So I think it'll be, and just one thing I'll say about the conduct of U.S. forces in Afghanistan. There is a expose by The Intercept. It was covered on like Democracy Now, but pretty much, I think the Washington Post did a story on it also. But the CIA, the Special Activities Division, the CIA soldiers, like ground troops, did a couple operations where they went to religious schools in Afghanistan. They rounded up, and these are children in the women's schools. They rounded up these children. Some of them were as young as 8 years old, 9 years old. They took them all into one room together, and then they executed all of them. I mean, this is Americans, CIA soldiers, ground troops, who were executing children, shooting children in the head to create this sense of terror that if you one day, this is what happens if you go to a religious school that could one day feed people into the ranks of the Taliban army. And that's pretty brutal. And that's all pretty emblematic, pretty representative of the conduct of Afghan military, Afghan special operations, U.S. special operations. I mean, summary executions were so commonplace, especially by special operations, U.S. and CIA and others. So the idea that the occupying military force that is carrying out over the last 20 years these type of actions can be some sort of force that can protect people is just false. Afghanistan can come forward. It can move towards progress, just like so many other countries that are plagued with the backwardness of just the impact of U.S. imperialism on the countries. They can't begin to move forward. They can't begin to progress until they solve that main contradiction, which is the contradiction with imperialism, an occupying foreign army. And so any forces in Afghanistan, women's activists, organizations over, like none of that will be able to get momentum or steam or push Afghanistan in the direction that it needs to go socially if there's a war in the country between an occupying imperialist power, multiple ones, and an insurgent force that's fighting it, that gets pretty popular fighting it because most people don't like the foreign occupying troops. So of course we want to see social progress in Afghanistan, but that is a chapter that has to start with the elimination of an occupying imperialist force that becomes, when that exists, it sucks up everything. It becomes the main problem in the country. And I think now that that's gone, I think there opens up entirely new space for there to be social progress. And I don't want to, and the last thing I'll say is, I don't want to paint any kind of rosy picture of the Taliban or make any optimistic predictions about the kind of government that they're going to impose on the country. But I will say that there was just one of the recent statements by the Taliban was saying, we want to create a unity government. We're not going to, and even said specifically, we believe in the right of women to get an education and so forth. And so they seem to be kind of trying to play, they want to have some kind of PR around the fact that we're not what everyone says we are. We're not going to do things that are objectionable. We're going to be a legitimate government of a sovereign country on the world stage. So I don't want to give that too much credence or believability. I mean, we'll have to see, but that's also the kind of thing you don't see in the, the dire projections. Not only that, but also the fact that the impact on women by the U.S. occupation.